Master Hot Yoga, Bikram Yoga, Barkan Yoga, Ghosh Yoga, any yoga for that matter, but I'm an expert at Hot Yoga, so specifically Hot Yoga, Bikram Yoga, with these 3 game-changing adjustments. Now make sure to watch the video all the way to the end because the third one is by far the most important one, but these are game-changing adjustments. Bikram Yoga, Barkan Yoga is a very athletic style of yoga, and if you're not careful, you could hurt yourself, especially your knees, especially your back. These 3 game-changing adjustments will help to prevent injury and at the same time propel you in your practice. You're going to get a lot better, a lot faster. So tip number 1, stack the joints. How are you going to protect your knees in hot yoga, especially when we do posture like triangle pose or the setup to triangle and other styles of yoga? They call it warrior 2. You got to get the knee over the ankle. So let's take a look at this clip. Here's Elena. Her knee is so far forward over her toes, the knee is now vulnerable. So you got to get that knee stacked over the ankle, and by doing so, by stacking the joints, that's how you're protecting the knee. Now, before I give you the next tip, if you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing. Smash the like button if you're enjoying this video. Any comments, questions, or concerns, or frustrations, put them down below. I get to all the comments. Now, in the Bikram world, they really don't adjust and give you the Q knee over the ankle because if you look at the cover of Bikram's second book, here he is with Rajashree doing the triangle pose. I love Bikram to death, and he had an amazing practice, especially when it came to hip openers. But in Bikram, which is very typical to a person from Asia, his legs are this big. His torso was extremely long. So for Bikram, he wasn't able to get his knee over his ankle. But if you look at Rajashree right next to Bikram, she is lining up the knee over the ankle because her torso is not as long. So Bikram never really addressed that issue because he wasn't able to do it himself because his spine was so long, his torso was so long, and his legs were this big. And once again, I'm not trashing Bikram and his physiology is because in yoga, he was extraordinary. Because when you're smaller, you have an advantage in yoga. Bikram's hips were amazing. A lot more flexible than my hips ever were or ever will be. My strength was more hamstrings. Now here's another perfect example about stacking the joints. In Bikram's advanced class, they do a sequence called Salute to the God and Goddesses. We also do it in the Barkan class in Moon Salutation and Salute to the God and Goddesses. It's the kneeling salute. So the way Bikram is teaching is the knee goes past the ankle. Once again, he wasn't able to get his knee to stack over his ankle because his legs were too short. But once you stack the knee over the ankle, what a difference it's going to make. It's going to protect the knees, it's going to protect the joints, and will actually get you into a deeper back bend and even protect the lower back, which is going to bring us to our next tip. But I want you to look at another example using the triangle pose once again about keeping the body, keeping the joints stacked. So here's an example. Here's Alex, a regular Barkan student, doing the triangle posture incorrectly, where his hip is sticking out too far than his knee. His upper body is too far forward. So what we're going to do is we're going to get the knee, the hip, the other hip, knee, and foot all lined up from the side. Now take a look at this picture and you can see the other angle. Here he is doing it wrong. Here he is doing it right. Foot, hip, the other hip, knee, foot, all lined up from the side angle. Now that you're taking the body and stacking it, you're protecting the body, especially the knees, from injury. Super important. Make sure to be mindful of how your body's looking from the side. An advanced tip for triangle pose is to tuck the butt cheek of your bended knee under as the knee goes back. And along with tip number 1, protecting the knee, is don't lock the knee. I've said this many times in my videos. I'm really saying the same thing Bikram is saying, but in a different way. Bikram is saying no knee, one unbroken lamppost. The problem is if your knee's bending and you push it back to lock it, that's going to cause a hyperextension. If you hyperextend the knee, it could definitely compromise the knee because now the quadricep muscle is no longer engaged and there's no support. So I say straight leg, not a locked knee. I really mean the same thing. It's just really a matter of semantics, but be careful not to hyperextend that leg all the way back. If you do, you're going to compromise the knee and that could definitely result in injury. Tip number 2, and this is going to help the back tremendously, don't push the hips past the knees in your back bend. In hot yoga, we exaggerate the back bends. And the half moon back bend and camel pose, which are extremely important postures because taking the body, especially the spine, in a backward bending motion creates a range of motion that's essential for the future of your body because we're helping to keep the spine mobile and flexible. But if you're pushing your hips too far forward, if you exaggerate the cue of pushing your hips too far forward, you're going to compromise the lower back and you're going to be in some serious pain. Now, in almost every yoga posture we do, we find an opposite direction. For example, half moon to the side. You're not just reaching your arms to the right, you're pushing your hips to the left. But now when we do the half moon back bend, you're not just going back, you're pushing your hips forward. The problem is if you push your hips too far forward past the knees, that's how you're compromising the lower back. So here's Elena. Take a look at this clip. She's pushing her hips way too far forward, and that creates a crunch in the sacrum, and that could definitely cause an injury over the long run. So instead, what Elena's going to do, she's going to lift her chest, reach back. So she's going to try to get the back coming from the lower more to the middle back and get all of that pressure off the lower back so you can see the difference. Her hips are not past her knees. Now let's look at camel pose. Once again, here's Elena. If her hips are too far forward and past her knees in camel pose, once again, she's going to crunch the sacrum and she could definitely hurt the lower back. Instead, she's going to lift her chest and reach back, and look at the difference. Her hips do not go past the knees. So where does this cue come from? When Bikram started teaching the camel pose in Beverly Hills back in the 70s, a lot of people weren't used to this back bend motion, and their hips are too far forward and their hips are too far back. Take a look at this picture. So for this guy, you're going to cue him to push his hips forward. Now when you get somebody that has a much greater range of motion in back bend, somebody like Isaac Garcia, one of Bikram's most advanced yogis that I ever saw. In fact, I helped him straighten his leg for the first time in standing bow in his teacher training program. I think it was 2001. It might have been earlier than that, maybe 2000, I'm not sure. Isaac took it to the extreme when he pushed his hips too far forward. He didn't have to do that. He made this beautiful posture of all the 91, and they call them 84 postures in the Bikram advanced class, and he asked me for my opinion. It was really an extraordinary example of the yogic postures. But the only thing, and he asked me for my opinion, and I said to Isaac, the only thing that I see is that in the camel pose and in the half moon pose, your hips are too far forward. And what he said to me was, Emmy Cleaves, who was Bikram's most senior teacher, even though I tell you that I was most senior teacher, Emmy was definitely more senior than I. She taught me the advanced class. I just happened to be out on the circuit representing Bikram. That's why he bestowed me the title. But he said that Emmy Cleaves said the exact same thing to him. That cue of pushing the hips too far forward is going to compromise the lower back, and eventually it could result in injury. And tip number 3, the most important, it's a tip that I learned from a different style of yoga, the Krishnamacharyan side, and it's called, ready for the drum roll, scoop the tailbone. By scooping the tailbone down, by turning the tailbone down toward the floor, we're going to widen the sacrum and lengthen the spine. This is a revolutionary, game-changing tip, especially in the Bikram world, that I want you to think about implementing in your daily practice. So it really starts from the ground up. Let's take a look at this video of Elena. When you start your yoga practice and you do the standing deep breathing, you don't want to just stand there, bring your fingers under the chin and start. When you do a half moon pose, you don't just stand there, bring your arms overhead and start. You want to stack the body from the ground up. You want to build the foundation. So let's look at this video from Elena. You're going to lift the toes and spread them. Place them onto the ground. All 4 corners evenly distribute of the feet. You're going to allow your inner thighs to rotate in. Is what they call in the Anusara yoga world the inner spiral. Once again, back to the studio with Elena, and be real specific of what I mean about scooping the tailbone. Here's Elena in an arch back. Now here's Elena turning her tailbone all the way underneath in what I call a tuck. We don't want that either. What we want is go back to the arch position and just turn the tailbone down toward the floor. That slow, very subtle turning of the tailbone down to the floor, what it does is it widens the sacrum, widens the lower back, and automatically the upper body lifts. And that takes all the pressure off the lower back. When I started to implement scooping the tailbone, it changed my practice forever. So when do you want to scoop your tailbone? Anytime you're standing up into what they call samastitihi, which is called equal condition. When you're doing a posture like a first part awkward pose. We're going to go show you a video of that in a second. When you're doing a posture like eagle pose, you're trying to get your upper body back, but you're not arching your lower back to do that. You're actually going to turn the tailbone down and then lift from your chest to bring the upper body back. This is the game-changing tip. This is why I say it's the most important one, because when I started doing this, all my lower back pain was gone. In the old days when I was doing tremendous amount of yoga, remember my second ex-wife, unfortunately I number them, but the good news is I'm on my third, 3 is a charm. My second ex-wife, she looked down at me because I had an ice pack on my back or a heating pack. I think I did heating pack back then on my back every night. She goes, you know what? There's something wrong with that yoga that you do. And I looked up and I said, you don't understand. I'm a professional athlete. Leave me alone.
Leave me alone.
She was right. So when I started to scoop the tailbone, all that lower back problem, all that lower back aching was gone. It revolutionized my body. At the same time, I was able to go even further in the pose. And Bikram did this automatically, especially with his long torso. Here's a clip of him doing the first part awkward pose on a television show called call it the Dinah Shore Show. Anybody who's my age knows Dinah Shore was a famous singer, entertainer. She had a talk show like Oprah did at one point, or Ellen DeGeneres. So here's Bikram. He's going down into the awkward pose, and then look, he turns his tailbone under. That's what's getting his spine so nice and tall and straight. If you look at Julia Prowse behind him, she's arching her back in an improper way to bring her upper body back because she doesn't have that long torso that Bikram has. But when you get down, you want to turn the tailbone under to protect the lower spine. Bikram's automatically doing it. Now in the third part awkward pose, as Bikram and Julia Prowse go down, Julia Prowse, by the way, was on the cover of Bikram's first book. She was also a very famous actress, singer, entertainer in Las Vegas. I taught her many times in the old days back in the late 70s. So here comes, or early 80s, here comes Bikram down into the third part awkward pose. Now look at Julia Prowse. She's actually turning her tailbone all the way under. She's tucking it. I don't like it going that far under, but what she's doing is automatically protecting her lower back by getting down to the pose. It's just more of a subtle turn down. I think she's doing a little too dramatically the other way, because that's why I don't say tuck the tailbone. I say scoop the tailbone, because we're not tucking it all the way under. We're just turning the tailbone down. What a difference it's going to make to widen the sacrum, and most importantly, to protect that lower back, and that's going to transform your practice. So let's sum it up. Number one, we're going to stack the joints, especially to protect the knee, to protect the body. Number two, we're not going to push our hips forward past our knees, especially, and this is more at people that have more of advanced back bend, especially if you had that flexibility and range of motion. If you push your hips past your knees, you're going to definitely compromise the lower back. And tip number three, the most important, scoop the tailbone. By scooping the tailbone, it's going to get rid of all your lower back problems, which can be definitely something in the Bikram and Barkan world that happens as a chronic problem. We're going to eliminate that completely, and that's going to allow your postures to transcend. So that's our episode for today. Thank you so much for watching. If you're new to the channel and you want to learn all about hot yoga, tutorials, flows, and factoids like this one, make sure to hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell. If you enjoy this video, make sure to smash the like button. Any comments, questions, or frustrations, put them down below. I get to all the comments, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye, guys.